Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'm Ruth Shelley, President of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our live weekly membership meeting. This year's theme for Rotary International is Rotary Opens Opportunities. As we've heard every week, Rotary opens opportunities to find solutions for today's challenges. Healing from the pandemic, recovery from the economic downturn, and peace building as we seek racial justice. This week, we opened door number 3, peace building, as our speaker, Lauren Johnson, enlightens us on efforts to promote equity in Portland's early childhood community. But first, let's welcome Rotarian Mike Rosenberg for our reflection. Mike?
Thank you, President Ruth. So I think today what I'm going to do is pass along a little bit of advice that I've received several times over the years, which is, and with anything that you get, I think multiple times of hitting, multiple times of receiving it helps it sink in a little bit. And that's to provide unsolicited recommendations, reviews, etc. for the people in your life. You know, whether that is the reason this came up for me is our business put out a book, and we had several people who bought this book and reviewed it without, you know, our knowledge, and it wasn't even in their realm of things that they would want to read and learn. They just did it because they know us. And, you know, that really hit me as something that was appreciative, and it reminded me to do the same thing. And you know, so I would say put in your, again, you've probably heard this before. People in sales say do this all the time because it helps you stay relevant, et cetera. But just as sort of being a person, whether that's reading a book or you listen to a podcast, whether you know the person or not, do that review. The things that I think also people forget maybe too is do that review of, you know, the restaurant's kind of the classic example. You have a great experience. I know people who've been frequently in the same restaurant once a week because they want to do their part to keep them in business, different things like that. Yeah, do that review. But what about your CPA or your lawyer, you know, those professional service type folks that you don't necessarily think about? You'd be surprised how much value that brings to them when you reach out and do it. So, and then on the other side, in closing, if you have things that you want asked, I was asked to review a book, and it was an honor for me, for the person to ask me to do it. And I was glad to do it after I read it and appreciated it and thought that others weren't. So just sort of help spread the work that other people are doing.
Thank you, Mike. That's wonderful. One more way for us to stay connected. Those unsolicited recommendations are those random acts of kindness that we all need to support each other. And if you'd like to volunteer to give the reflection in the future, Siobhan has the link in the chat, or you can email her directly. Please consider it. And now I'd like to ask that Rotarians who have invited a guest to raise their real or virtual hand, and Maria will call on you to unmute and introduce them. Or if you're a visiting Rotarian who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself, or let us know of your presence via the chat box. Maria, do we have any guests today?
We do. We have a guest of Wes Harper. I'll start with Wes. Wes, you're going to need to press unmute to share with us about your guest. But you did great on raising your hand. I was like, yes.
Okay. Delighted to introduce my daughter, Courtney McCormick, who took advantage of a break in jobs to come up to visit Ginger and me. And she works in the area of genomics, or genomics, I guess most people say, which is basically how genes work.
Very nice. And I also have a returning guest from last week. Virginia Arthur from Catholic Charities of Oregon has joined us again. Thank you, Virginia. I'm waving at you. And I also saw that we had Funda Kelsey, a guest Rotarian from out in, I think, Hillsborough area, as our other guest with us today. And I don't see anyone else violently shaking their hand at me or waving. So I think those are, oh, Carol Salter. Carol.
Hi, I have a guest today, Libby Winter. She is joining us. This is her first time joining us for the Portland Rotary Club. So welcome, Libby.
Welcome, Libby. Thank you. And Carol, thank you for not stopping the hands. Yeah, you got to keep it going while I'm moving screen to screen. So I think that's all we have. Back to you, President Ruth.
Well, that's terrific. Welcome, Courtney, Virginia, Funda, and Libby. We're so glad you joined us. And now I'd like to extend a happy anniversary to everyone who joined Rotary Club of Portland in April. As you know, we alternate each week honoring birthdays and Rotary anniversaries for the month. Please note these wonderful veteran Rotarians, the long times that they've been with us. It's so important for us to keep up our membership in these challenging times. Congratulations to you all. And now moving on, please welcome one of our community grant recipients, my friend Nick Gallo of Youth Progress, to tell us about his organization and the use of his grant. Nick?
Hello and good afternoon, and thank you, President Ruth. It's so nice to see you and connect with you here, and to see all the Rotarians here as well. And I'm going to try to set up the screen again, make sure that we have kind of the presentation up, and then we'll share a little bit about Youth Progress and the impact of the incredible investment made by Portland Rotary. Is everybody able to see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I would start by saying I would love to have the opportunity to meet with you all in person, and hopefully that opportunity will be afforded at some point in the not too distant future. So today I'll go through a presentation about Youth Progress and the impact of the investments made. So at Youth Progress, we like to say that opportunity lives here. So at Youth Progress, we believe that young people in the juvenile justice and foster care systems are leaders and scholars and artists and athletes and entrepreneurs. That is clearly different than some of the narrative that is out in the community at times. And so together, it's our opportunity to be a diverse and inclusive community of staff and foster parents who provide young people in these systems with safe and stable housing and opportunities to grow and learn and succeed. So Youth Progress was founded in 1964. We've been in Portland ever since. Started kind of as a boys' home back in the late 1960s and have evolved over the years. And now we focus in on providing therapeutic foster homes to young people in the juvenile justice and foster care systems. And as you can see, the success that we've had in recent years has really been focused in on foster parent recruitment and connecting with community members like yourself who want to help to make sure that young people have the supports they need to be successful. The key to that success has really been our focusing in on the simple challenge of what would it take for somebody who wants to open their heart to young people in foster care to be able to do so successfully, right? What would it take to open your heart and your home to young people in foster care? And really, oftentimes that is having the support necessary. If you think about the challenges that goes on with just as a parent of young children as they grow up, being a foster parent is all that more complicated and challenging. And so what we did is we created a team of dedicated professionals to recruit, certify, train, and support foster parents to make sure that there was somebody there for the foster parent, for the young people in their care, because together we are able to make sure that the young people have that support through that village. So within that, then, young people are placed with us through the state of Oregon and are placed into our programs with the caring and compassionate foster parent. And we provide therapeutic supports and services to help young people be successful. We have 3 primary programs. Our Community Collective, which works with young people primarily in the foster care system. The Learning Center, which is an alternative school where young people are enrolled, funded through Portland Public Schools. And then again, placed in the foster homes, will provide support. And then where the Rotary investment went is our College and Career Attainment Program, which focuses in on young adults, 17 to 25, who have oftentimes spent, many years in the system, may have been in and out of a youth correctional facility, and are now trying to make that successful transition into adulthood. And so about a year and a half ago, we were looking for a new home for this program to establish a career center. and found a location on 79th and Foster. This is the front of the building that we were excited about. And as we walked into the building, we knew that the space was going to be home for us, but it was going to need a little bit of work. This is what it kind of looked like as we wandered in. Now, there was a before the before, but this was as we really got into the space. I can't imagine a realtor actually having the tour start here, but this is where I'll start for this presentation as we got into making the space our own. And after a little bit of love and support and investment, we were able to kind of turn it into much more of a youth center, right? And so this was then pre-Rotarian investment. We had another community partner agency help us to get a pool table up there to make it a nice rec room. And through the support of Portland Rotary, we were able to add so much more in there. We were able to get computers, video game entertainment system, foosball table. And again, our work is not just to have a fun place for young people to play, although the young people that we're working with, you can imagine, are working 40, 50 hours a week, saving up. And so when they're with us during the daytime, a lot of the time it's that downtime where we want to make sure that it's a safe and supportive environment, as well as that then allows our staff to do that engagement work to connect with the young people. And then the next room over is, which the picture didn't quite illustrate, is a classroom space where we do all of the resume building, skill building, career mapping, interview prep, all of that work with the young people to set them up for future success in the workforce. And so kind of the centerpiece of the investment that we were able to add in is a smart board, a vibe board, where our college and career training specialist was so very excited to have the support to be able to have kind of best in class technology. Because as you can imagine, for 17, 18, and 19-year-olds, technology is a key driver of like, what is this experience going to be like as I walk into this building? And so we've been able to do kind of multimodality training and learning for the young people who are served through the program. And so with that, the impact has been nothing short of transformational of having this career center in place for the young people that we work with. Just as a little bit of a snapshot, I won't kind of the detail of the services we provide, but the key highlights on here is that 94.44% of the young men that we're serving become gainfully employed through our time at our career center. And now, again, these are young men who are coming out of correctional facility. There's a notion of second chance employment. This is first chance, which is for people who've gone to jail and are getting their second chance to become gainfully employed. For us, it's first chance for these young men. This is their first chance, first opportunity to be successful. As you can imagine, these young men are also working out there as the essential workers during the pandemic and are having a lot of success along the way. The average savings of the young people when they graduate out of our program is about $3,500. You can imagine being 19, 20, 21, and not necessarily having that familial support or parent support. You have to have money in the bank for when that first issue happens. And so these young men are able to first pay back their restitution because they have monies that they owe. We help them to kind of work that all through, and they're able to transition out successfully with money in the bank. And one of the young people in our program, and again, you can imagine that young people who are have gone through correctional system aren't super excited about the programs there. And a lot of the time, one of the young men interviewed by one of our state partners gave our program a 10 out of 10, and our state partner was like, "That doesn't happen." So again, thank you for that generous support to help us make that a reality. And then somebody a few years ago posted on our Facebook, and I decided that I just had to share this in all presentations, which is that somebody just found us, tracked us down and said, "I'm a product of the Love of Care and Youth Progress Association. I'll be retiring from a great job and have enjoyed traveling around the world and traveled to South Korea. The things I would have never expected if it were not for Youth Progress showing me a brighter future." So this is our goal, that the young people that we're serving today, 30 years, 40 years from now, will be able to think back fondly on the time at Youth Progress and help us set them up on a positive trajectory for life. A little budget information I can share that if folks are interested, and then we have a robust board of directors who helps to effectively oversee and govern the organization that we're operating within. I'm not sure. With that, I guess I'll hand it back over to you, Ruth, and answer any questions there might be.
Thank you, Nick. If you could put your contact information in the chat, anyone who has questions can contact you directly. But we are thrilled to be able to support you with this grant. And I love seeing the before and after pictures and the before and after stories. It really underscores how Rotary makes a difference. And now it's time for our breakout rooms. We're all going to disappear and enter a virtual table talk. Please introduce yourselves to the others in your group. And as usual, a minute or so before you come back to this main meeting, you'll get a visual heads up. If the conversation flows, go ahead and chat about whatever you like. But if you need a suggestion for a topic, since we're talking about early childhood today, what was a pivotal experience in your youth that influenced your later life? Here we go. And now on to our program. After our speaker today is finished, if you'd like to ask Lauren a question, Maria will moderate the Q&A through the chat box. And I get to be chair of the day today as I welcome Lauren Johnson as today's speaker. Lauren is Executive Director of Social Venture Partners, or SVP. And in that role, she leads a partnership of engaged professionals whose efforts go beyond traditional philanthropy, which we'll learn about today. Prior to this role, Lauren was SVP's Senior Vice President for Community Impact for 7 years, so she's been with the organization a long time. But before joining SVP, Lauren was a program officer at Thrive Foundation for Youth, where she managed a portfolio of investments with the goal of transforming the lives of millions of youth across the US. I think you can hear a theme in our meeting today with Nick's grant and SVP's focus. She was also the founding manager of a Schools Uniting Neighborhoods, or SUN program, and an English teacher.
Corinne, did we lose her?
I think we did. Lauren, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. Apologies, Lauren, for your introduction being cut short, but we are so excited to hear about Social Venture Partners. So why don't we just transfer it right over to you?
No worries at all. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And actually, I also want to introduce my colleague, Matt Little. Matt, if you'll wave. Our Director of Investor Partnerships is also joining us. And we're just delighted to connect with all of you today and share a little bit about SVP and the work that we're doing in the community. I want to attempt this technology and share my screen with you. So Maria, I'm looking at you. Can you see? Okay. And are you only seeing my PowerPoint? Terrific. Okay. So I begin with this photo of Mount Hood because I am a 4th generation Oregonian, and I think that the Pacific Northwest is truly an amazing place to live. But I don't take it for granted. We have incredible natural resources, as well as generations before us that invested to create what we have today. And I believe that to whom much is given, much is expected. So we have an opportunity to invest our resources to ensure a thriving and more equitable Oregon for future generations. The problem is, data shows that 30,000 children under the age of 6 are at risk of long-term failure without access to quality learning. We know that 90% of brain development occurs in the first 5 years of life. Furthermore, research shows that children who do not have access to quality early learning experiences are 20% less likely to graduate from high school. They earn 48% less likely than someone with a bachelor's degree or higher, and they are 70% more likely to commit criminal offenses. We know that starting behind means not only the loss of cognitive skills, but also social and emotional skills. And these kids only have a 13% chance of catching up with their peers who start kindergarten with a strong foundation. And this is preventable. So at SVP, we leaned on the wisdom of Jeffrey Canada and asked, instead of helping some kids beat the odds, why don't we just change the odds? At SVP, we see potential. We are about getting to the root of the problem and investing where we know there is the greatest return. Economists estimate that the rate of return for investing in quality preschool ranges between $7 and $10 for every one invested. We know that quality early learning programs improve health, education, economic, and social outcomes, saving money on costly interventions later in life. By not investing in our children at a young age, we are not only failing them, but their children and grandchildren and the long-term success of our community. At SVP, we decided, we actually shifted from broadly investing in children, youth, and families to focusing narrowly on preschool, because we know that quality early education is a leading strategy for breaking down barriers that have kept many children from achieving long-term success. After we made this shift and identified the goal of working to ensure that all children in Multnomah County have access to preschool, we invested in a research project in order to learn from other communities. The Rutgers State of Preschool Yearbook ranks 43 state or city programs across the country aimed at increasing access to preschool. So we identified 15 cities with successful programs and conducted 16 interviews across 8 of those cities. From this research, we produced a report to learn from their lessons, what worked, what didn't, that ultimately informed Multnomah County's Preschool for All plan and report. We know that ensuring access to preschool for all of our kids will require transformation on a number of levels, which brings me to venture philanthropy, and as an example, the role that SVP plays in our community. So I'm going to take the next few minutes to tell you a bit about what is venture philanthropy, and then also share an illustration of why this matters. So as an overview, venture philanthropy is the investment of human, social, and financial capital to build the capacity of nonprofits, of collaborations, and initiatives, applying 5 key elements of venture capital practice. And so it's what we call a high engagement model. The 5 key elements include making a multi-year commitment to a long-term plan for social change, defining what success looks like up front, investing a combination of skills, expertise, and dollars, establishing a high engagement relationship, along with mutual accountability for results. It's really an investment of dedicated people, recognizing that the whole of what we do together is greater than the sum of its parts. So here's a visual that I like to share that compares venture philanthropy to more traditional philanthropy. And so you'll note, I'm not going to read it, but that in venture philanthropy, we make multi-year investments focused on strengthening organizational capacity rather than one-year, more project-focused grants. Another difference is that a traditional funder relationship is primarily transactional in nature, writing a grant, versus one that is transformational, that's really about the relationship. And the other thing I'd call out is that kind of the learning and impact is mutual in venture philanthropy. Nonprofits grow their capacity for impact, and philanthropists learn about root causes, community needs, effective solutions, as well as building cross-sector partnerships. So how do we do this? As President Ruth had started to share, SVP is a community of professionals and philanthropists, which we call our investor partners, who collectively contribute their dollars, skills, and expertise, and then are matched by SVP staff to work directly with high potential nonprofits and initiatives, helping them strengthen and grow. And our partnerships are focused on various areas of a nonprofit organization's infrastructure. So these include those listed on the screen. We're often doing vision and strategy work, HR, IT, board governance and leadership development, financial systems and management, marketing communications, sometimes real estate, business planning, etc. So now I'd like to share an example of one of SVP's recent capacity building partnerships to really kind of bring it to life for you. And the organization I'm going to speak about is called Latino Network and is now the leading nonprofit in providing services to the Latinx population in the Portland metro area. And we know that 22% of Oregon's population is Latinx, only 27% of Latinx children are meeting state reading benchmarks. So clearly we're failing these children. Latino Network, however, has a program that has proven to change these odds. It's called Juntos Aprendemos, which means together we learn, and it equips 3, 4, and 5-year-olds and their parents with the early literacy and school readiness skills needed to be successful. So graduates of Juntos Aprendemos achieve very different outcomes. Over 97% of the children increase their abilities to recognize written letters, to count, hold a book correctly, and focus on classroom activities. 100% of program graduates registered for kindergarten on time, which is important. And 100% of parents reported reading with their children at least 3 times a week. So this is tremendous change. And I want to tell you a story about why this matters. One child in the program was a 4-year-old boy named Ariel, whose parents had immigrated here. And neither of his parents had had access to quality educational opportunities growing up. His mother felt fortunate to have graduated from high school because his father wasn't able to finish. His parents recognized the importance of learning and starting early. Ariel shared with his mom, "I want to be a fireman and I want to go to the moon, Mom." And his mom said, "You can do those things, but you're going to have to learn a lot." Unfortunately for Ariel, the cost of preschool is exceptionally high in Portland, or actually across our state, which was a real barrier for his family. But fortunately, there are programs like Juntos Aprendemos. And because of this program, Ariel learned his letters and how to count and how to follow directions, to sit in a circle and sing songs with his peers. His parents are now reading to him many times a week. And he told his mom that he loves reading books. So this is transformational, and it impacts Ariel's entire life trajectory. We know that this really matters because we want Ariel and other children to be on a path to meet 3rd grade reading and math benchmarks, because we know that this means they are much more likely to graduate from high school, to be sufficient, self-sufficient, and engaged members of our community over the long term. And it all starts early. But this is actually about more than just Ariel, as there are 14,000 kids in Multnomah County who don't currently have access to quality early learning, which is why SVP invests to help build the capacity of organizations like Latino Network to grow their impact. So as an example, and illustrated in this slide, we at SVP initially invested in Latino Network in 2012. And at that time, they had 13 full-time staff and a budget of 1.5 million. And Juntos Aprendemos was in 3 classrooms. So SVP partnered with them to help develop a business plan to scale the program. We did a lot of work on HR, infrastructure, financial systems, fund development, strategic planning, program evaluation, and board governance, amongst other areas. And today, Latino Network has a budget of over 10 million and a staff of over 120. So Juntos has grown to 15 schools and is on a path to continue to scale. It's really, truly remarkable. This said, as you're well aware, Latino Network, like many nonprofits across our country, faced tremendous challenges in 2020, from the loss of revenue, along with the need to significantly adapt program delivery and learn to manage staff remotely. The ongoing uncertainty about the course of the pandemic, combined with violent expressions of racism in our city, intensified the stress and anxiety staff felt. I'd say children and families in our communities needed more support and flexibility and empathy than ever before. SVP's nonprofit partners, from my perspective, I was truly blown away by their resilience and how they kind of nimbly reimagined their focus and approach throughout COVID. They learned to work virtually and helped resolve myriad technological issues for youth and for their parents. They offered creative activities to keep children engaged and help families with food or accessing food and other essential resources. I would say all embraced innovation to meet increased needs. SVP also rose to the moment to help fuel the resilience of our nonprofit partners by supporting their leadership, financial management, helping to secure federal Paycheck Protection Program dollars. We actually helped secure, I believe the final number was 3.4 million for our portfolio, our community partners. We helped them in adapting their communications with funders, as well as influencing statewide advocacy. So we were truly honored to work hand in hand with Latino Network, along with 11 other organizations, to try to help them to survive a particularly challenging year and build capacity to thrive over the long term. And we can only do this because we have investor partners like Holly, who is in the center of the picture here. And Holly is SVP's lead partner for our partnership with Latino Network. So this means that she invested her time and her skills to work closely with the executive director, or the previous executive director, who we actually recently supported their leadership transition, but Carmen Rubio, who's pictured on the left here. And Holly also, in addition to working with Carmen and her team, coordinated a team of SVP partners who engaged in various projects, from writing a new marketing plan to assessing their financial health, and ensuring they have proper policies and systems in place. So as a business owner and attorney, Holly has served as a tremendous advocate, even going down to Salem to speak to her representatives about the importance of investing in early childhood and in programs like Juntos Aprendemos. Holly is just an example to share with you today. She's one of 130 SVP partners. And our impact is really due to community members like Holly, who collectively invest their skills along with their dollars and work side by side with remarkable leaders like Carmen. So we have now come full circle. And I close by sharing that I care so deeply about what the future looks like for us here in Oregon. And I know many of you in this virtual room do as well. I'm optimistic, I truly am, about what we can accomplish collectively together towards this vision of a thriving community for the next generation. So that is the end of my formal presentation. And I turn back, I don't know if President Ruth is.
To me, I'll take it back.
Okay, great.
Yes, thank you so very much. That was a wonderful presentation. Just a reminder to our Rotarians, if you have a question for Lauren, please raise your electronic blue hand or just write a message in the chat saying you have a question, and I'll come to you in the order I receive them. We're going to start with our first question from Rotarian Chris Achterman. Chris.
Not muted. You commented about the exposure to reading and being read aloud to. And in my career, I was an orthopedic surgeon focused on children, and I spent a fair amount of time promoting a book called the Read Aloud Handbook, which has great read aloud lists. But unfortunately, that book is focused on white people like me. And I wondered if you are doing any work of creating resources that are meaningful to the communities that you're working with in terms of supplying books. I mean, you know, Dick and Jane are fine for me, but there's a whole other population out there that those don't relate to.
That's such a great question, and that's really important. I mean, along these lines, it's hard to be what you can't see. And actually, Nick mentioned this as well in terms of narrative, or no, it was in my breakout room. I think someone was talking about expectations and expectations from a young age about, you know, your potential as a young person, and can you be a doctor? Can I be an orthopedic surgeon? Do I know someone who looks like me? And they are that, right? So what I would share is that we made an investment. We had it was about a 5-year capacity building partnership with a nonprofit organization here called Children's Book Bank. And they collect donated books and package them into book bags to deliver in partnership with community-based organizations, and prioritize working with many culturally specific organizations. And they, just over the last few years, have launched a campaign to do exactly what you're talking about, secure books that reflect the racial ethnic diversity of our community so that kids see themselves in the story. I believe it's called A Story Like Mine. So that's one. And Matt, if you want to put Children's Book Bank or their website in the chat, they are an organization that, I'll pause there, but we're doing really exceptional work in our community.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rotarian Mike Rosenberg. Mike?
Thanks, Maria. Lauren, thank you so much. The question, you mentioned it briefly, the Preschool for All passing. I was just curious, maybe briefly, SVP's involvement in that, and then how that's going to impact the work that you're doing moving forward. I mean, now that the early education is the main focus.
Yeah, so I'd say SVP was really an instigator. Back 8 years ago, we served as a convener. I mean, that's a role that we can play in venture philanthropy, that we're a neutral convener with a vested interest in the shared community goal of ensuring equitable access to quality early learning. So convened the part of the Cradle to Career effort that All Hands Raised was leading here locally. And so our convening role was for the Ready for Kindergarten Collaborative. That was really, I mean, the observation was, Portland was, program rich, but systems poor. There really was, a lot of siloed work in the early childhood sector. We didn't have an early childhood system. And so what could we do if they were better coordinated and aligned and working towards shared goals and outcomes for our kids? So that was really the beginning of this kind of cross-sector effort in saying, is universal preschool a possibility? So we served as convener and facilitator, and one of the things I mentioned in my presentation was the research that we did. And that's, again, often a role that we play as venture philanthropists. We are not early childhood experts. That is not my background, not my expertise. Most of our investor partners, early childhood is not their expertise. They're generally bringing business acumen to the work. And we're investing in community-based organizations that have the early childhood expertise. So we did have partners. I mean, early on, building towards the Preschool for All vision, there were teams working on program policy, financing, infrastructure, facilities, workforce development. So we have had SVP partners with expertise in those various areas, helping to shape the research and planning. And then we did not shape the final policy. I mean, it really was community driven and community owned. It was important. One of the differences in Preschool for All from other cities is that it was important to really ensure marginalized voices that have been historically excluded from conversations were at the table. And so we played a role really in advocating for community-based organizations and childcare providers, being heard to help shape and inform such that kind of grass tops leaders heard from more grassroots leaders in terms of community needs and potential solutions. So just to name a few.
Excellent. Lauren, you have a queue of questions coming, so I'm going to go to it. We have a question from our guest today, Courtney. Courtney, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself. Sure.
Hi, Lauren. My question is, what is the selection process for new nonprofits?
Yeah, it's a longer conversation, but I would say when we shifted to this goal and saw, really the scarcity mindset in the nonprofit sector, and also the way in which funding opportunities often kind of encouraged competition for scarce resources, rather than our work as a convener was really trying to facilitate coordination and collaboration towards the shared outcomes that we want to see in our community. And given the nature of our work is so relational that we can only serve as a strong advisor or coach to an executive director or a team if we're really invited in and understand kind of the true challenges and the root causes within an organization. We moved away from an RFP process, kind of a more traditional RFP process, and shifted to what we call is more along the lines of design thinking, but co-creating investment proposals with a nonprofit organization. So we'll go and sit down over coffee and say, you know, executive director, what is your vision and what's precluding your progress in terms of organizational capacity constraints? But we're looking for organizations with a strong commitment to equity and to early childhood, to our goal of early childhood and equitable access to preschool, with a strong commitment to continuous learning and improvement. So they're focused on, you know, some sort of program evaluation, understanding who they're impacting and how, with a leader with an audacious vision for growth in some way, and whether that's breadth or depth. And then an organization that's wanting to seriously address capacity challenges and to have a funder or funding partner like SVP really in their business, working hand in hand with them over a period of years to help achieve their vision.
Thank you, Lauren. I love that. Somebody with an audacious vision. It's a great way to say that. Our next question comes from Rotarian Angel Pilato. Angel?
Yes, thank you so much for all the good work you're doing. I really enjoyed your talk. And I especially like the fact that you're with an organization long-term so that you can really help them with their mission. Now, the one question I had, and I think it's probably already been answered because you mentioned the title of the book, but I was saying, is the reading that you're giving them in English? And if the parents are reading to them and they're having problems with English, how does that go? And sidebar, so important, my father ended up going to school and couldn't speak a word of English. He could only speak Italian. And he only did well because a teacher kept him after school every night. So I know how important this is. So go ahead with your answer. Thank you.
So I should first clarify that SVP doesn't provide any direct program or services in the community. All of our, the capacity building we do is with the nonprofit organizations that do the direct service. So the Children's Book Bank, the organization that I mentioned, that's the organization that provides the books for children. I do know they offer books, provide books in multiple languages, given the racial ethnic diversity of the children that they serve, the children in our community, and the importance of that.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rotarian Maggie Bolger. Maggie.
Hi, thank you, Lauren, so much. My question is about this, you know, we've all had to adapt this last year, and you shared that you guys have had to adapt as well. What are some lessons, what are some key pieces that, you know, you've taken away from this last year that may actually how change or alter how you approach your work going forward in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one thing that I've noticed about SVP, we're very entrepreneurial in spirit, right? I mean, we're founded on the core principles of venture capital. And so, you know, we tend to be, you know, quite nimble. And so there were a couple of ways that we were able to respond to community needs over the past year. You know, we're far from bureaucratic as an organization. So one example is the childcare sector was really, you know, devastated by COVID. And we find that there are a lot of small women-owned, people of color-owned businesses that are providing these childcare, which is essential for our workforce and for our children across the state. But their core competency is childcare, not necessarily running a business. And so SVP stepped up to serve as fiscal sponsor and really incubator. And I'd say that's the key word I want to call out, this role of incubator when there is a significant community need and a quick response that's required. So we served as incubator to create a statewide Childcare Shared Services Alliance. So it's really the back end of running a business, a lot of like HR, IT, financials, accounting, financial systems, et cetera, that a lot of small childcare providers aren't able to do. So we're not doing all of that work. We just helped create the model. So as one example, or the other being the way that we shifted to become experts very quickly in how to apply for Paycheck Protection Program dollars as part of the CARES Act, so that we could support our nonprofit partners in applying and securing and then managing those loans. So I think that's that's important in terms of, our world is changing very rapidly, whether COVID, a global pandemic or technology. And I think the ability to be nimble and adaptive and highly collaborative are skills that are just essential moving forward.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Rotarian Carol Salter. Carol.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Now I'm not sure whether you can answer my question or not. I've been intrigued with all of your other answers. Easter Seals has over 100 year in working with children with disabilities. And we now have the opportunity of developing a program for children with disabilities in the Multnomah County, or maybe the Tri-County area, but focusing on Portland. And so we're in the middle of doing a gaps analysis to find out what are the gaps. Do we have enough service providers out there already in 0 to 3, birth to 3, or do we need more for children with autism who are in middle school or those graduating from high school? And wondering if SVP has had any kind of pulse on the gaps for specifically for children with disabilities or autism.
Yeah, I would say I'm not an expert on that, but what I am is connected to a number of organizations who probably are. So if you want to send me an email, and Matt can put both our website as well as our email if anyone has questions about SVP, but there are a number of organizations that provide direct services who could probably help with that, but that's great.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Rotarian Bill Diaz. Bill.
Thank you very much, Marie. And Lauren, thank you. The question I have has to do with family relief nurseries and the ability to build some capacity for them. Are you aware of the critical work that family relief nurseries do for children at risk, giving them a healthy home environment so that they can thrive?
I am. Yeah, I know they're doing really exceptional work across the state. We're not currently in partnership. I know they're working closely with Preschool for All and the Child Care Resource and Referral Center. And we are in partnership with a Child Care Resource and Referral Center about the work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Jumping in because I have a question for you, Lauren. I think, by the way, what you're doing at SVP, I just love the meld of the resource to the nonprofits who are needing some of that business acumen. You mentioned 130 of your partners. How long do most people volunteer with you? Is this a one and done? Do you see people staying with you for 10 years? What's your challenge in attracting new partners? And is there an obstacle to getting them to commit? Because this seems, time, talent, treasure, the whole trifecta. What's been either, something that's worked or a challenge that you have in getting the right 130 partners or more?
Yeah. Well, I want to say we're always looking to grow, right? I mean, there's need in the community for more capacity building. And so the more partners we have, the more resources we have to invest in more organizations and invest more deeply, and are always looking for to grow our skill sets. So we have been on a trajectory towards growth. And I would say we have not done a great job at kind of raising awareness about SVP in the Portland community. So actually Matt's role at SVP is meeting with anyone who's excited about venture philanthropy and this notion of engaged capacity building with, the opportunity to work directly with community-based organizations. So he's a great person to connect with. And actually with that, I'll turn it over, Matt, since this is the work that you do. Do you want to respond to some of Maria's questions?
Yeah, actually, COVID and the pandemic actually created maybe a sense of urgency on people who want to make a difference. We we thought we'd have fewer partners join the network last year, and we actually had the opposite. We had about 24 new investor partners join. And I put a little note in the chat that really SVP is all about the investor partners and what they do in their partnerships with our community partners. We on staff really just facilitate it all. And so we're always looking for folks who want to give their time and their investments. And this is the place that folks can get really deep and work closely with these groups as true partners. And so that's my job. I'm always working with new prospects and also our current investor partners to make sure that their engagements are really meaningful and enjoyable and fit their schedules. So yeah, you have our contact information in here, and really appreciate this opportunity to talk about SVP and the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you all for such thoughtful questions. I love it when a good portion of the presentation time is dedicated to this kind of dialogue, because then we know what you care about and we can have our accomplished speakers direct their very specific answers to your questions. Next week, we'll hear from our very own Rotarians who will talk about Toastmasters. This meeting will once again be live via Zoom at noon on Tuesday. And if you have an idea for a future speaker, please submit them on the website. Siobhan will put the link in the chat. And now as we close, I want to thank our virtual guests today. Courtney, Virginia, Funda, Libby, welcome. We're so glad you joined us. Mike, thank you for your thoughtful reflection, and I'm going to remember those unsolicited recommendations. Nick, congratulations to you and Youth Progress on your grant. You're doing such fabulous work. And Lauren, thank you for continuing that theme of supporting youth with your insightful presentation. I know, and if I had had a chance to ask my question, it would be what benefit the SVP investors get back from their participation, because in that dedication of time, treasure, and talent, it's not just a matter of giving funds. You really get a lot back in terms of being able to contribute expertise and seeing it bear fruit in nonprofits who thrive. Now, as we enter into a new Rotary Week, please join me in opening the doors of opportunity for healing, for recovery, and peace building. As Rotarians, we're here to make our world healthier, more sustainable, and with justice for all. Wishing you all a good week. This meeting is adjourned.